Hello, my name is Linda, and this is Just a Bookaholic, and today I am going to be talking about 5 really subpar thrillers. Like, so bad, they are seared into my mind. Is it just me, or is it like always the really terrible and the really great books that are always like seared into your mind, but especially the really terrible ones? Maybe it's like the mind trying to protect itself from having that traumatic experience repeated over and over again. Yes? No? Just me? Oh well. Anyway, so I'm gonna start off with like least terrible of the terrible thrillers to the worst of the worst. First book I'm going to be talking about is Dead Girl Society by Krys. And it looks like a Krys. Sorry if I mispronounced your last name. I feel your pain, but oops. Anyway, one is a YA thriller that centers around a girl with CF. So I couldn't find anything on the author to like state that this is own voices, but I don't have cystic fibrosis, so I can't speak to like how good the representation is, but it wasn't problematic from what I remember. I rated this book 2.5 stars. This centers around a girl named Hope who is living with her mother and kind of feels trapped and stifled in life because her mom's overprotective because of her illness, and she's like trying to figure out how to pay for college, and she ends up getting a mysterious letter that introduces her to the Dead Girls Club, where it's like a group of random girls in this New Orleans suburb that do ridiculous dares, and there's like a grand prize, and she's trying to like get the money to pay for her treatment as well as to pay for college, and that's how it unwinds. But the execution was so disappointing and underwhelming. It was just a cast of lackluster characters, and I thought this was gonna be like a secret society kind of book, and if you want a secret society kind of book, I highly recommend Ace of Spades. Fantastic YA thriller that does deal with a really weird secret society, but this one did not. And there was just no depth to the characters, and the plot was so underwhelming to the point where it was just so disappointing in its execution, and I'm just like, it wasn't good. It just wasn't good, and it could have been great, but that's what makes it so much sadder, the fact that it could have been great but it wasn't. The next thriller I'm going to be talking about is a more recent one, and it is The Hunting Wives by Mary Cobb, and I was kind of cover baited because something to know about me is I have a weakness for lipsticks, and just like the motif kind of drew me in. But I don't even categorize this as a thriller because there was no like suspense. Despite the centering around a murder, there was no suspense to this book. And this is about a woman who moves from Chicago to a small suburban upper class town in Texas, and she gets like drawn into this cliquey group of wives who like get drunk and skeet at a pool house for some goddamn reason. I don't know what rich white people do, but yeah, that's what they do. And they also go around flirting with barely legal teen boys for some goddamn reason. And yeah, that is the books. And a girl ends up dead near that stupid pool house, and you gotta figure out what the hell happens. And honestly, despite there being a dead body, it was just so fucking dull. I'm sorry, I was trying not to curse in this video, but like, you know, it was just so dull and disappointing. I don't even consider it a thriller because there was no suspense or dread or anticipation for like reveals, because it was just an like overly dramatic, bordering on soap opera book about women who day drink to an excessive point, and also adultery and Alcoholism is not a personality trait, and this book really proves that. So yeah, not a fan. The next book I am going to discuss, The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I was trying to think of it like, or a more accurate descriptor of what I'm doing right now other than complaining, but like, you know, this counts as a discussion and an analysis, right? Yes, maybe. Okay, so this centers around a group of friends who are going to a wedding that is like being hosted on some weird British island in the middle of nowhere, isolated, and possibly, I don't remember, somewhere in the United Kingdom, and which is already kind of a red flag for bad things to occur. Just saying, having a wedding in the middle of nowhere on an island where there's like very nil chance of getting help easily or quickly, just red flag, and kind of on brand because someone ends up dead by the end of the party. And it was just a really predictable thriller, and the choice to have the perspective, like the point of view, flit from guest to guest or friend to friend in every other chapter was a choice, and I dare say it wasn't a good choice because it makes it really easy for the reader to figure out who did what, essentially rendering all the twists, like the revelations and twists, nil and pointless. Just the decision to go from so many different perspectives really took away any intrigue, and there was like a decent amount of build-up in the beginning. Initially, there was a good atmosphere set by the author in this book, but it just, over time, very quickly, any kind of intrigue was taken away because you are privy to every character's innermost thoughts and like shames and secrets and whatnot, and it's just makes the writing very shallow and transparent to the point where I barely, like, it just felt like there was no real mystery, just a slowly doled out crime scene, and all that it left me in the end was deep apathy and just boredom. Speaking of deep apathy and boredom, the next book also filled me with that as well. Hopefully I get better at picking out thrillers. Hopefully. I'm very picky with my thrillers, so fingers crossed there isn't a sequel. Or maybe you want a sequel of this, but the next book I am going to be talking about is The Silent Patient by Michaelides. And I rated this book 1 star, and this centers around this woman who had a perfect life named Alicia, and she was an artist who was married to a photographer, and the husband ended up getting, like, I think shot in the face or like viciously murdered, and everyone thinks that she did it, but after the husband winds up dead, she ceases to speak. So this whole book centers around this psychotherapist who moves to the institution that Alicia's in to uncover why she's not speaking. And I coined this book the "Tell Me You Took Intro to Greek Literature Without Telling Me" book, because dear Lord, we get it. You know you're Greek lit. I don't care that you know you're Greek lit, but we know, we all know. But yeah, I just wasn't down with the main character who is the psychotherapist. Just very odious character, and usually I can get down with an unlikable character, but like chained to the POV of this character, you gotta suffer through. Well, I suffered in just being with him through the entirety of the book, and I just felt like this book was like peak male gaze, because you're literally following this obnoxious, odious man through as he's trying to save and fix this gal who may or may not have like murdered her husband, and no one knows why. So that is like the central mystery, but I just felt like the twist was written in a way that it gave everything, like gave the revelation away too quickly and bordered unpredictable. Like I kind of figured out who did what fairly quickly from what I remembered, or to the point where like before it was revealed, you know what happens. So I don't know, just wasn't down for it. Didn't like Theo, that's his name, and yeah, didn't have fun reading that book. And the final and worst thriller I've read, I think still to date, is The Perfect Girl by Gilly Macmillan. Not an extremely popular one, but you know, it was one of the most memorably disappointing reads to date because the entire plot could be predicted less than 80 pages in, and I figured out the whole central mystery was, and I hated it so much. Despite the entire book taking place in the span of 2 days, the narrative just dragged on, and the title is the biggest fucking bait of them all, because the main character, the titular perfect girl, is the most train wreck protagonist I have read about in a while. Like, so far off to the point I don't know why you would make that the title of the book, because the main girl was such a disaster of a human being, and the book is supposed to like center or explore the mind of a prodigy, and you're wondering if she's like a dangerous criminal or not, but in reality you learn really quickly that she's just a traumatized teenager with stunted emotional intelligence and lacking any logic. So yeah, I wouldn't even recommend this to a person that I hate just to like ruin their day. No one deserves, well, some people do deserve to suffer that much, but like highly do not recommend picking this book up. Truly awful. And what made it worse, like it just got continually worse and worse. And trigger warning, the random addition of child molestation was thrown in on the final 40 pages because, like, you know, you gotta add in as much trauma as possible. So those were 5 of the worst thrillers I've read to date. Highly do not recommend these books. Hope you're surviving these precarious times, and my bad if this video is late. Bye.